Imagine being told your body is broken, yet going on to heal from brain injury, autoimmune disease, and severe allergies. Today's guest, Michal LeBaron, did just that. Her journey from barely surviving to thriving will change how you think about healing. Welcome to WellWaveNOW, your portal for actionable wellness insights. We, Brett Rice, Dr. Bob Levine, and myself, Tim Daniels, are your wellness catalysts committed to elevating your health, enhancing your functionality, and optimizing your performance at every life stage. WellWaveNOW, where timeless wisdom lights your wellness path. So Breck is attending a conference today. So Bob and I are here to welcome Michal LeBaron, a true wellness hero whose personal healing journey defies conventional knowledge. After years of battling debilitating illness, from autoimmune disease and food allergies to a traumatic brain injury, she not only regained health, but learned to thrive. Michal's shift into the parasympathetic state changed everything. A former functional medicine practitioner, Michal now guides others to heal deeply by returning to peace, safety, and regeneration. Her story is both a challenge and an invitation.
Great to have you here, Michal. And I'd love to start out by having you tell us about your health journey. What was life like at the worst of your illness?
At the worst of my illness, I remember being in pain from head to toe and had already been bedridden for some time, probably about 6 months in the 2-year journey that I was, and just thinking, I don't know how I can possibly handle this.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. I mean, that's just crazy. And what were you aware of that was going? What were the different conditions that you were suffering from at the peak of your or the worst part of your ill health conditions there?
Yeah, at the worst part, it was still a mystery, actually. And I think that was part of the misery was the doctors didn't know. They're like, "Oh, you're fine." I'm like, "Well, clearly not." Like, can we run some more tests and so yeah, I remember thinking one time, gosh, I don't even care if it's like cancer or like I have 3 months to live or like whatever. Like just having an answer would provide at least clarity. At least that would be a little more relief than it is now. So it took some time before I was able to discover through functional medicine, actually, that I did have an autoimmune disease and genetic disorder and severe allergies and all of those things. So,
A lot going on there. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, Go ahead, Tim. You got something?
Yep. So what was that kind of the sequence? You found out you had the severe allergies and the autoimmune disease all at the same time. When did the traumatic brain injury also occur, and what did that add to the to the recipe that you were
Yeah.
you were
Well, it
baking
took a
for
lot.
yourself there?
Yeah, it took a lot of years actually to find the full picture. It was kind of one little piece at a time. Oh, I'm autoimmune. Oh, there's a genetic disorder. Oh, we have severe allergies. So that took a while. It actually took years, which is something I'm passionate about teaching people. Like, we don't have to drag it out for years. We can find answers relatively quickly. The brain injury and like post-concussive syndrome actually happened a few years ago. So I was already fully healthy and didn't have any of my old conditions. And so it was quite the ride to be faced again with, those challenges and have to lay down in a dark room and, no light, no sound, migraines constantly and go through a whole new healing process at that point.
How long ago was that?
That was probably about 3 years ago.
Wow. How long did it take you to evolve out of that?
I would say, thankfully, I had wonderful support and I had a body that was already working on healing itself. So it probably was, I would say, a good 6 months before I was just more like back to normal. And in my initial research, I was anticipating it to be about like a few years of recovery. So that was neat that, I saw an accelerated healing with that as well.
Do
Now
you
you
think? Go ahead, Tim.
you talked about took a while to diagnose you and figure out everything. So who were you? What type of healthcare providers were you seeing,
Mm,
and what type of testing was going on with them, Nicole?
yep. I mean, over the decade and a half of trying to figure stuff out, I saw so many people. I saw nutritionists, naturopaths, functional medicine, chiropractors. We did like heavy metal testing, saliva hormone testing, blood testing, you know, all the kinds, testing for parasites and candida and yeast and just so many things. Autoimmune panels up to the wazoo, dozens of, tests for different autoimmune diseases. And we did genetic testing. I mean, we really tried to look at everything. And it's amazing because after so much was tested, we had some answers. It was like, oh, cool, it's autoimmune. But it's like, but why? Why all of a sudden in my life did this autoimmune disease turn on? Like, it doesn't make sense, if you really start thinking about it. Nobody could tell me why or what to do about it. And so even with some answers, I still felt like the whole picture was missing a lot of clarity.
Yeah. And down that path where you said what to do about it. So once you had some answers, what were the methods you turned to first to trying to address those what you had identified?
Yeah. I now describe it like playing whack-a-mole. Everything that popped up that wasn't healthy, it's like you whack it with something. And, so it was like restricted dieting. I tried so many different diets. I actually went to school to get a master's in nutrition. And so we were reading a book a week on different nutrition protocols, right? So I tried most of them. And, lots of supplements, lots of herbs. I once made a list. Let's cut to the chase here. I once made a list of all the things I've tried, and I stopped when I was about 115 things.
Wow.
Because I just was like, I've made my point, and I don't need to keep sitting here listing all the other things that I've tried. It clearly is so many things, right? From acupressure to acupuncture to, you name it, hypnosis to, all the things. So I really tried a lot.
Had you, for the autoimmune portion, had they recommended any medications to you, and had you tried medications on that portion?
Yep. When we finally found the autoimmune condition, I was working with a holistic provider. I basically found someone that could run the test I wanted. That's how I chose them. I was like, can you run me this test? Great. Do it. So I never went back to the MD to get the official diagnosis. And at that point, I had really lost a lot of faith in regular medicine. I have been on medications for other things like thyroid and this and that. But at that point, I just was like, I'm gonna handle this a different way, and really dove into like what is the root cause and how do I heal my gut and how do I decrease inflammation and how do I take out food allergies and things that are triggering my immune system, and how do I supplement with a million things a day, and all of these things.
That's what a road. That's got to have been the most confusing and crazy road, because there's so much going on all at the same time.
Yeah.
So you have to be very smart, and I'm sure you are, because you worked through that. You figured it out. It's a major puzzle, huge puzzle. Now, I want to ask you this question. What do you think the role of stress was underneath all of this, if it was?
Yes, I now would say it was 100% causative in when the autoimmune disease turned on, and the timing is classic. It was 3 months prior to the onset of me turning on the autoimmune disease, and then basically being bedridden within a few more months, based on a major life change that took place. And I never thought it wasn't traumatic, but it was a life change. And I know now with researching the nervous system that one more change, was the straw that broke the camel's back, and my nervous system could no longer kind of cope in the same ways it had before.
So now with that, and so you talked about taking, and we'll get into a little bit later about why you kind of taken away the label of a functional medical practitioner for yourself, but you kind of took the functional approach. You say trying to get to the root cause of the challenge.
Yeah.
And then tried a number of things. And I've got I don't know, a lot of people go to Dr. Bob for pain relief. I'm sure have been through this. I've got some people that I have help with, and a buddy of mine right now is going through can't determine where some pain is coming from, but has been tested up and down and has tried shots in the back. He's tried PEMF. He's tried acupressure. So the story is similar to yours. And now he sits there and says, well, I don't know who to turn to anymore. I don't know if I want to try anything more. So what was it like for you going through all that and trying those different things and not getting the results that you wanted? And how do you keep yourself looking for the answer?
That's such a good question. Thank you. I was both relieved to actually be finding answers inside functional medicine. It was like, oh my gosh, I can explain stuff. Like, that was huge. And so I was so willing to do whatever it took, right, to like actually have a life. And so it's like, sure, cut out gluten, dairy, corn, soy, nightshades, all the things, lectins, blah, 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 take these supplements, whatever I got to do, pay the chiropractor, the body worker, the massage, like whatever, got it. Do vagus nerve exercises, I'm down. I was so compliant, so coachable. I was a very good patient. However, it started dawning on me when over the years, in order for me to have a life and manage symptoms somewhat, I just had to do these crazy things. And I still then had symptoms. So for me, it's not like nothing worked. I went from bedridden to seemingly healthy. No one would ever know everything I had to do in order to, function. But my breaking point really was like, this isn't healthy. I'm still not healthy. I'm forking out hundreds, if not thousands of dollars just to function. Like, this is not sustainable. I can't do this. And so for me, I think I made a decision very early on. I was still in my bedridden days, and it was one of those hopeless moments. And something hit me, and I knew within myself I had to choose to heal. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that it was a choice. And so I decided deep within, somewhere deep within, I will heal. And I'm going down this path, and whatever it takes, I'm choosing it. And so I think with that choice, I just couldn't give up. I just had to keep going and searching, and little answer by little answer kind of put together the whole picture. So
Yeah, that's so important what you're saying. People who are listening to this really want to know that it sometimes takes that where you finally, it's almost like you're at the bottom, and then you say to yourself, this shall be. I will heal. I will get better. This is going to happen. It's going to happen quickly. However somebody frames it. I call it the future vision. Your future vision is, and that's what I say you did.
yes,
You clicked in and you went, this is it. I'm on the path. And from that moment forward, you probably started making improvements, right? I would
yes,
expect, yeah.
yep.
So what worked in concert with your decision, to make that choice to heal? What were the modalities, if any, that you continued to use that were synergistic, or they worked together in combination with your internal drive to get better? What modalities were you using that you considered effective at that point in time?
Yeah, I think I learned, I had a lot of tools. I figured out what tools worked for me. And if a tool didn't work for me, I ditched it. And, I learned ways, to use my intuition, muscle testing, or to, tune into my own body's responses for my foods and for what diets to try and what supplements. And I think that helped me navigate it. So I wasn't so like blindly following, oh, this person thinks that this is the cure all. I'll blindly follow that. I had a little bit more discernment then at that point of like, I'm the one that's in control and in charge of my wellness, and I'm the one that has to have this discernment. So that really helped. So my life for a long time, was a restricted diet, eating very naturally, organic, non-toxic, lots of living foods. I was autoimmune paleo forever, and I found the right supplements, and I also started learning my limits, and avoiding certain things that I knew would trigger me. And so it was really, I would say it was restricted, but the restrictions gave me life until I was no longer comfortable with the restrictions. And then that's what had me seek a new way, which I know we'll talk about. Now I have none of those tools that I need, which is so neat.
About to say, so now before we get into the new way and what triggered for that, let's paint the picture, help people understand. So we've kind of you went through where you were at and managing symptoms. And so two parts to this. When you were managing symptoms, what were you still left with? And now also paint the picture of how your life is now, how your wellness and health is now.
Yep. So, I mean, humbling to admit this, but I was like a functional medicine practitioner and all the things, and I help people heal, and I solve all the tough cases. And I think I was in denial about how bad it was for me. But when I really started getting honest, I still had headaches every day. They just weren't migraines. I still had, pain, and I'd flare up probably every day, but certainly every week. I battled with fatigue, anxiety. I still had my digestive stuff. The autoimmune disease I attacked blood vessels, which are everywhere. So when I flared up or had an inflammation, cascade happening, it could affect any part of my body where there was blood vessels. So, I had dysautonomia, that was
Hold
still
on.
hitting me.
That's a big word there, Michal. Autonomic.
Yeah, your nervous system basically freaks out and doesn't regulate things. So it's like, you could not sleep and be up all night, or you could be sweating profusely, or you could be really tired and have low blood pressure, So it was like, even that, I remember being on a blood pressure cuff and a pulse ox monitor to monitor heart rate, and my numbers were just jumping. I mean, they were just up and down, up and down. And so then it's like, oh, I was in a car accident, so maybe I need cervical chiropractic, right? Adjustments, upper cervical chiropractic. And so that really helped, but then I had to keep going back because I kept going out of alignment. And every time I'd go out of alignment, my neck would, pop out. I'd have this whole reaction.
Was that a cervical one atlas adjustment you were doing?
Yes.
And it kept going out.
Wanted
That's
to.
weird because that's kind of weird
I
because
know.
yeah, most people who get the Atlas one, which is when I run across somebody who has symptoms that are persistent and wild like yours, I always recommend that they do that. And from the cervical practitioners that I know, once they get it in place, it tends to stay there. So that's really a shame that yours kept moving around on you.
Yep. And the whole weird comment, I mean, this is the story. Every person I'd go to, they're like, that's a weird.
Don't you hate that? I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to these specialists and these experts and all these people. Wow, I've never seen that before. That's incredible,
That was
I attribute that just to being in Colorado, Michal. If you'd have been next door in living the good life in Nebraska like I did, you wouldn't have been weird out there.
I wish it was that easy. I would have moved. It would have saved me money.
Could you imagine that? Just make one move and everything gets better. That's obviously.
If you'd have got that good prairie to the mountains, the good prairie and the good clean air, Nebraska air, you'd have been fine. But now go ahead. Now, but that's the other thing you two were talking about. This is a thing that's becoming more known, but I don't think it's still that widely known. You both were talking about the Atlas adjustment. So, Bob, you want to go ahead and explain what the Atlas adjustment is for?
Well, yeah, the Atlas vertebrae is C1, cervical one. So it's the vertebrae that is adjacent to the cranium, and all of the nervous flow and blood flow goes through these little what they call foramen or small little holes, right? And if that Atlas is out of alignment, it can impinge upon depending on how it's in alignment, how it's misaligned, it can impinge upon blood vessels and nerve flow through the area, and the symptom, and it can be variable. The symptoms can be all over the place. Which is, if I had run into you years ago, I would have said, "Wow, we got to at least get that done." There's other things that I would have recommended too, but that's one of the things because. And they use some very sophisticated X-rays of your head and everything, so they can determine the exact position of the Atlas. And then they use a sonic probe, and they don't even touch your skin, and they turn on the probe, and it slowly moves the C1, the cervical one Atlas, and it gets in. They call it a hole in one. It gets it into position and then chunks into place. And when
you had that done for yourself, Bob, and didn't that change something in some?
Yeah, I mean,
I had
a friend of mine who's an Atlas specialist, and so we were exchanging services to get to know what we do. And I had really bad TMJ, tubular mandibular joint. Sometimes my jaw would lock when I'd open my mouth, and it was always cracking. I mean, the cracking was crazy. I had that for basically most of my whole life, and I just lived with it. And so when I saw her, she did all her analysis. She got the C1 in place, and then I was laying on the table. She says, "Open your mouth." I'm like, "What do you mean, open my mouth? What do you want me to open my mouth for?" She says, "Just open your mouth." And I went, and it was like, "Whoa, it's gone. What's going on here?" She says, "I could tell from all the X-rays that you had TMJ and it was really bad. And when that Atlas went in position, it solved that issue. It's crazy. I mean, that's the kind of thing. It's just wild. So anyway.
But just like the clean Nebraska air blowing over into Colorado couldn't solve that for Michal. The Atlas adjustment didn't work for you, and you were still managing. You said that the headaches and pain, just different levels. So now paint the picture for us now. Where are you at for yourself now, Michal?
Yeah, it's so cool. I never thought this was possible, and if I would have heard it, I would have thought I was nuts. But I can honestly say I am fully healthy, and what that has come to mean and what I experience is that I don't have ongoing symptoms. I don't have the chronic illnesses. My labs are normal. There's no sign of an autoimmune disease. the genetic disorder that's actually shown up in my test since I've been a baby, and doctors could have diagnosed it but didn't because it's benign, and there's no medications for it in the U.S.
What's it called?
Gilbert's or Gilbert syndrome. And then I have a ton of, genetic SNPs in my detox pathways.
What are the symptoms of that?
Jaundice. I get jaundiced and then have gallbladder problems and hard time digesting fats, and then that affects the skin and your hormones and everything else.
But that's not expressing now.
No, it's not. And my bilirubin levels are normal,
Why,
which they've always come back high
why do you think it's not expressing now?
because I'm fully healthy.
Well, yeah, sure. Is there anything more you could say about that?
Yes. So yeah, like when I was just like, I'm missing something. I'm still sick and I'm sick of managing symptoms. There has to be more. I found nervous system work, and essentially that came down to the one system that controls everything. And I already knew from my time in functional medicine that everyone was in a state of fight or flight, right? We're in survival mode. And so knowing this, I would always tell people like, oh, do vagus nerve exercises and do yoga and do deep breathing and do all these things that help you regulate so that you can get into the parasympathetic nervous system for resting and repair.
Can you just explain parasympathetic simply and sympathetic system?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So yes, the nervous system, it works like a teeter-totter. So we have our fight or flight system, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. That's like survival. That's like when we get chased by a bear, that turns on.
That's sympathetic. That's sympathetic.
Sympathetic, yes.
Okay.
I think S for stress is a good, easy way. And then the parasympathetic, I think P for peace, like I'm at peace. That when that turns on, when we are parasympathetic dominant, that's known as the resting and digesting system, or the growth and repair system. And so when we're in that system, our bodies work optimally, our cells function differently, we produce regenerative hormones instead of stress hormones. Our immune system can work, our digestion, our detox, like all systems turn on. Our brain function regulates, and we are able to be in a whole brain state or a state of coherence. And so how it was described to me from somebody that I watched kind of get rid of 5 autoimmune diseases, and she could eat gluten again. I was like, what? This isn't possible. And anyway, a couple years later, she was still healthy. I kept waiting for her to get sick again, and she never did. So I called her, what are you doing? And she talked about the nervous system. I said, I already know all this. I'm already helping clients with this. We do like a ton of different tools for the nervous system. And she said to me, no, Michal, you have to learn to live in the parasympathetic all the time. And when she said live in the parasympathetic, that was my light bulb moment. And I thought to myself, I think I have no idea what she means. Like, I know the nervous system. I have tons of tools. And I think I have no idea how to just get myself to live there all the time and not even need tools. So I went on a few months of regulating my nervous system, getting out of that state of fight or flight. And at the end of that 3 months, I was able to introduce all foods, some of which I had anaphylactic reactions to, no problems. Tests come back normal, like I don't make antibodies to those foods anymore, which is like crazy to me because that was also supposed to be permanent. My symptoms went away. I weaned off my supplements. I weaned off meds. I did my tests. I kept doing my tests, and they all came back clean. And so it really was life-changing for me. So it's like, how do I do that? It's like, it's the power of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is able to produce medicine like all the time. And that was why I was even willing to try it out, whether I believed it would work or not. I knew it couldn't be harmful to me. It couldn't make me worse. So I said,
when you say try it out, what are you trying out actually?
It's like, let me see if I can word it well. At the time, I was willing to devote time to learn about my nervous system and to go through a process of uncovering what was triggering my nervous system and keeping me in a state of fight or flight.
I think that's so important what you're saying, because people, like, we know a lot, right? Everybody knows a lot. The question is, can the rubber hit the road for us? Can we make it happen for ourselves? How many practitioners are helping others and we don't realize, sometimes we haven't realized what's going on with ourselves. And I think you made that transition where you were able to figure that out for yourself. And then when you said, I loved when you say sympathetic system stress and parasympathetic peace, I'm going to steal that. But the stress, I believe the stress you were under that you didn't realize you were under was actually manifesting all this stuff.
Yes.
And when you made the shift from being in sympathetic tone to parasympathetic tone, all of a sudden you had peace in your whole being, right?
Yes.
So how does one, well, so two things here, but I want to ask you a compound question. I can separate for this thing. Number one, so how do you realize consciously, if necessary, consciously, what state you're in?
Great
Mm,
question.
that is a good question. Um, for me, it was a process of learning myself. Um, that's part of what learning to
Learning yourself,
regulate.
learning yourself. What do you mean by
Like
learning?
learning my own cues.
Okay.
And it's interesting. It's like, well, so how do you do it? And it's always like, well, how long do you have, man? We could talk for 3 months. But, in simple terms, it's a process of becoming aware of when I'm dysregulated and of what my patterns of dysregulation are.
Yeah.
So that could be anything from, I'm feeling tension and my thoughts are racing, to, I'm being a perfectionist and I'm in a codependent pattern with someone, or I'm people pleasing, or I'm having anger
Yeah.
outbursts. Like, these are all dysregulated signs. And so, one of the
With the word,
keys of learning to live in the parasympathetic, in my opinion, now, my experience, is learning the nature of these. Exactly your question. It's like, actually, yes, if you can know when you're dysregulated and what your own patterns are, then you can consciously regulate and readjust and interrupt those patterns. And that's more like the process of it.
how do you interrupt the patterns? That's it.
Yeah, that's such a good one. So,
Bob's Bob, I gotta jump in here. Bob's got a leading question now. So he's got an automatic pattern recognition
Well,
approach.
I developed the automatic pattern recognition interruption system. So, that I developed that specifically so people could don't have to go through what all that you went through. I mean, I'm so
yeah,
happy you came out the other side because so many people might have just been buried in all of that. You know,
totally.
and you came out
Yes.
of it. This is fantastic. And that's one
Yes.
of the reasons why I developed that system. But anyway,
I
I
love
think
it.
people need to know, how do you shift yourself? How do you go from, and I wanted to bring up the word trigger because I think people get triggered by external inputs or their own
Yes.
thoughts, the reactive thoughts, and then they go off into the heavy duty sympathetic mode. I have a different way of describing it all, but
Oh,
so
cool.
the question is how do you say that shift can occur? And that can be
Yes.
really effective for people.
Totally. I mean, it's like high level overview. We're talking about like expanding our consciousness, right? Bringing our unconscious patterns conscious. And I heard something really amazing, and then I'll make it practical, I promise. That, in order for you to be able to see a pattern that's what was unconscious, it means that you've outgrown it. So to me now today, it's simply recognizing it is the pattern interrupt. However, I know there's a lot that went into me learning those skills, so it's just automatic now. And some of the foundational ways we work with people in the few months that we're working through them and helping them go through this process is helping them slow down so that they are fully present and aware. And so by doing that regularly throughout every single day, recognizing when I'm sped up, it will allow there to be a level of awareness so that they begin to themselves recognize these patterns. So it's like slowing down is key. So even if a trigger pops up, let's get grounded, let's take some deep breaths, let's, just be present in this now
Well,
moment. And then I can use my logic and reasoning and turn on those parts of my brain
right.
and work
And
through
I
it.
guess, like you said, as you get into the practical things, you're starting to sound like a Californian too. I live in California too now, Nicole. You're starting to sound like a Californian to me. Okay, so so let's break this. How how do I know? How do I know? I could think that I'm in the parasympathetic, and then you describe the healing that takes place in that, and I think that's known, that's accepted, maybe not to the level of how much power that has as you bringing forward, but it's kind of known in that parasympathetic. But I could think I'm in the parasympathetic and not know it. So how did you know when you were outside of it? What was happening?
Thank you. Yes, I actually hear that a lot. Oh no, I'm in the parasympathetic. Oh no, I do yoga. Oh, I do meditation. So
Mm,
here's some black and white structures. If you live in the parasympathetic, you don't have ongoing symptoms or chronic illnesses. So right there, if you have symptoms that you have to manage that continue to come back, that you continue to manage, flat out, you are in sympathetic dominance. It's like black and white, clear as day. So once I understood this, there was no doubt in my mind. It's like, well, obviously, if I was in the parasympathetic all the time, my body would be working optimally. There'd be a fancy word called homeostasis, which means everything is balanced and there are no symptoms. So that to me was key. It was like, basically, because I am sick, I am in the sympathetic. And my one solution that I am going after now is, how do I learn to live in the parasympathetic? That's the end goal. So that's an easy one. Another cool one, I always pull up a slide with clients, and we actually Google, signs of fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or behaviors of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. These are all sympathetic dominant things. So that's like people pleasing, codependence, lack of identity, difficult time making decisions, anxiety, fear, inability to sit still, anger outbursts, being controlling behaviors, any insecure attachment styles. If y'all know about attachment styles in relationships, any of the insecure attachment styles are dysregulated. So that's an anxious attached, avoidant attached, disorganized. If you don't know that, it's fine. You can go on a rabbit hole. But there are so many ways to see dysregulation, and we believe that like 92-ish% of the planet is dysregulated, is living in sympathetic dominance from how we understand that. Meaning there's a survival program that's running, and it's running unconsciously, and it's compromising us mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Okay. Then the part, I know it says Bob wants to come in, but I have to walk back some things sometimes. I just get that way. So I do have to walk back the California comment, because my son was actually born in California, and so he's actually, and then he's back living there now. So I do love my son, and California's has some practicality to him too at that point. So go ahead, Bob.
I'm wondering, do you think it's possible that somebody could be living in or shift themselves from a sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state and yet still experience some kind of chronic pain?
No.
Really?
So you say you take arthritis, for example, Nicole, and you say and so the bone degenerate, and let's take the OA type. So the cartilage is gone, the bone on bone is there. Yeah, and you don't think that could cause some pain?
And can it be rebuilt?
And be in the and you can still be in the parasympathetic.
Can the joint be rebuilt?
What's interesting about that, I would probably say, if you'd asked me a couple years ago, I'd be like, I don't know. I've only been taught that it can't. But we had, two individuals. They were women. One of them, she's a veteran, and she did have a hole and bone on bone, and she was scheduled for a surgery. She found out about our work, and she's like, well, I'd rather do this first. Like, what do I have to lose? Kind of same thing. And she worked with us for 4 months. She went back she wasn't having pain, but she was scheduled for the surgery, right? So you shouldn't not have surgery if you need the surgery. And we're not saying to not go through medical, continue following your doctor's advice. But she actually had her surgeon rerun all the imaging, and they couldn't find the tear, which is medically impossible. So of course they had another surgeon rerun all the imaging, and they couldn't find it. And so they basically canceled her surgery because
What tear?
I can't remember what her specific tear was. Yes.
Is it a knee or a hip or a...
Oh, knee. Yes. In the knee. Yeah. And she was bone on bone. And so, so that's like, okay, wow. Like we hear just stories of like, or Chiari malformation. That's where there's a structural problem, right? So your brain is actually getting squished, and your brainstem is getting squished in the skull. So I'm thinking, well, I don't know how much of these symptoms can be solved because it's a physical structural problem, right? And so sure enough, a few months into the process and nervous system regulation, she didn't have any of her symptoms. So it's like, well, was the symptoms really coming from that? Or, so I can't really make any claims or anything, but I can say I've seen just medical miracles that were supposedly impossible actually, come about, like a gentleman with HIV who was given 3 months to live, and here he is, and no sign of HIV, and his immune system is fully healthy. So it's like, these are medically impossible things that are taking place. So
yeah, the thing is, that's go ahead, Tim.
So I hear you, and on the immune and even disease things, like HIV and things of those types of things. Bob doesn't like me to say things of that nature, which I'm so accustomed to, but I like to say it anyway, things of that nature. Then I'm all with the challenge I have, and then I want to get on to some other things is the structural thing and not feeling pain and being out of the parasympathetic. Now, and I'm questioning myself as I state this as well. For example, I interacted with a former professional basketball player at one point. It had a laminectomy, and it was just an excruciating pain and limited his movements and couldn't sleep and had to walk on a cane.
Yeah.
Those type of the things, I said, I don't. That's where I question whether or not getting into a parasympathetic state are going to alleviate that condition. Now, at the same time, I say that I know, what he did. He actually, and I haven't talked to him now for over a year. But the path he went down is he actually had one of those implanted things in the system that trick the body signal to say, hey, this didn't recognize it as pain anymore. And then he's moving around. So maybe getting into the parasympathetic mode might do the same. But
I mean, we treat people gingerly as well. We never make claims, and so we've even told people, with this structural issue, you might need the surgery, and that might be the healthy choice for you. Right? But what better way than to be in a self-repairing body 24/7 to recover from the injury and to have the best chance at living, right? So, how we work with individuals is less concepts and more practical application. So when they can feel dysregulation in their own body and then we regulate them, and it's like, well, how's your pain now? What I mean? It's like, oh yeah, there's a difference. Like, hey, well, what if we kept you here all the time? Then that's more telling when we're working with somebody individually. What is your experience as you get regulated? Because your best day, right? Your best day could be all the time. And so we're like, I don't know if it'll, be all the way or whatever, but if you are willing to heal to the depth and the core of your being, why you're in survival mode and why your body is not allowed to be in a self-healing and regenerative state, that could have some benefits. And the benefits are peace.
I have a million questions.
Oh, good. I know.
You can probably tell. So my question is, if you got somebody in your office, and I would like to talk about the modalities, how you do that, and you could get somebody in your office and you could actually keep them there for a while. They could spend time with you, have some meals with you, sleep there, how long would it take for all of their symptoms? Like if you knew what you knew now back when you were bedridden, how long would it take you to get out of that state? Do you think? Just a projection.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed symptom relief sooner than 3 months, but it really was about 3 months for me. On average, we see about 3 to 5 months, but we are not having people live with us,
Right.
move in and,
they're out in the world.
Yeah, it's more like we're slowly giving them stuff. We're meeting with them weekly, like we're available daily if they need something, but we're slowly giving them teaching them these skills.
Well, what are the skills and what are the tools? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we use no tools, which I think confuses people even more.
Well, tool, what do you mean by, I mean, tool is not like a screwdriver. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
A tool is a way I consider a tool a way of thinking.
Oh, I love that.
As a tool, it's a tool you can use like in your toolbox. But go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's so good. Yeah, I'm like, what do we call it? I'm like, well, skills. Skills is a good word. Awarenesses, right? So we call them modules, right? And so they're skills that we teach. And we teach experientially, so it can't be concepts. So somebody has to engage until there's an actual experiential learning that takes place. So everyone's a little bit different. I've had people get this in 10 weeks. They blow my mind. I've had people, that have got this, over like 7 months or, it's taken them a little bit longer. A lot of the foundational things we're teaching are really helping a person, again, have self-awarenesses. So
how do they get that? How do they get that?
Yeah. So, for example, we might start teaching them to what presence is. So if you think like Eckhart Tolle, right, the power of now, being in the present moment, not in your head, everybody can understand that concept, but it's very different to embody it. So one of our modules, right, is teaching people how to actually embody presence in such a way that when they start describing their experience, it matches what everyone else says once they've experienced that. So it's a lot of experiential learning, which sometimes can be hard to articulate. But slowing down throughout the day, 5 to 10 times a day with a simple like grounding or breathing technique, or there's tons of different techniques you could use, that begins to interrupt the automatic patterns. And it's amazing because we don't really teach anybody at that point anything. They're just slowing down. And it always astounds us, people will come back and say, yeah, my pain's 50% better. I'm like, just that? Like, you haven't even started anything yet.
Yeah,
Or they're like, hey, I realized this thing that I never realized I was doing, but now I recognize I'm doing that. So the self-awareness turns on, and then they make behavioral changes with that new awareness. We also have about 4 others that we lay as the
right.
foundation.
That's good. And we always like to give our people some practical advice. And so later on, before we wrap up here, we'll ask you a couple of steps people could take on that. But we don't,
Yes.
we can't do your whole methodology and approach justice in this portion. But a couple of things you hit on there. One, you said it took you about 3 months before you got relief. But then so I just want people to understand, though, because you also touched on something here where you're talking about some of the patients or clients that come into you. Is it an all or nothing thing, or did you personally start feeling some progress, just like you alluded to here, that there was some lessening, some progress that happened? So what happens with people?
Yeah, totally. And everyone's different. It's interesting to watch. Different conditions act differently as well, and our brain acts differently. So for me, I definitely had a ton of relief prior to the 3 months, but that was kind of the point where I was like, hey, I think I'm good. I think I've got it. I'm going to keep living my life this way. But there was relief, at times within weeks. It was very interesting. I noticed I was detoxing, and that was very strange to me because I was like, I'm not taking a detox. I'm not on a cleanse. How could I be detoxing? And it really showed me the power of the parasympathetic. When that sucker turns on and stays on, your body is able to go into a very deep cellular healing and regeneration process. And there's a famous German doctor who actually proved, like with brain scans, that when people experience life changes or stressful events, it creates a lesion on their brain. And wherever their brain is affected, it corresponds to the part of their body that has the illness. And as they go through and heal the nervous system and work through these past stresses and learn to treat themselves kindly, right? And put themselves first, not last, and fill their own cup and be people of integrity and, all these things. Have emotional intelligence. When these things are in place, they can rescan the brains, and the lesion is gone, and the body has already begun healed his own cancer that way. And so anyway, it's just so neat how, yes, like it's coming out, like this is available. It's just not mainstream.
All right. So now before we got to get into that too. But so now before we go into that portion, I'm going to ask you a question, because there's a famous TV doctor who will remain nameless, but my wife and I were watching that individual one time, and one week they would say, try this, try that, and I said, you watch. They're going to have people calling in and saying everybody tries. They're trying this. That's not possible. They're going to be trying 10 things, and yet he had to come back on a few weeks later and said everybody's trying these 10 things at once. Now, that's not where I'm going, particularly with your approach, but it's the same concept. Is sometimes you need the sympathetic system, right? So if you have people living in the parasympathetic, is it impossible for them to bring out the sympathetic when they need it? I don't want people getting scared and saying, yeah, my kid is underneath this car. I need to get that superhuman strength that comes in the sympathetic, and I can't get it because Mikal's taught me all these things, has me living the parasympathetic, and I can't bring it out. So somebody's trying to carjack me at the gas station, and I won't be able to. I'll just be so content, I won't even run away from it. So do you lock them in, Nicole, where they can't get out?
That's such a good question. There's no locking in. In fact, I think the opposite would occur, that because we have a more healthy and toned nervous system, as well as all the hormones, our adrenal glands aren't tired, you know what I mean? Like, our body is in a fully functioning state, that would allow us, if we need it, to have a more effective sympathetic response. But also the key is being able to regulate out of it quickly and when it's time. So yeah, you'll have more superhuman strength if you need it.
It's true.
All right.
If you consider the sympathetic nervous system, or both these scales on a 0 to 10, if you're operating at 7 on the sympathetic scale, your ability to respond with power is less than if you were on a 7 parasympathetic and a 3 sympathetic, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time on you. We got about eight minutes left here, and that's good, because you kind of like Bob, and you talked about someone can be practitioner, heal yourself sometimes. But we also, and we've alluded to your system, but we also want to make sure that people understand that this is broader, and they can reach out to you for help to understand this and get in this healing mode as you learned it. So tell us a little bit about your, if you want to call it a practice. So now I'm going to ask you a compound question here, because I know you got it here. So as one, tell us about your practice. Two, why'd you stop labeling yourself as a functional medicine person in this practice? And within that, what's the range of things you're helping, conditions and things people are coming to you with?
Thank you so much. So I work with a team. They all have experienced this themselves, right? We have to teach by living it and embodying it ourselves. Otherwise, how can we lead anyone? And so we work all virtually. So that's kind of the structure of it. And I have a variety of backgrounds. We've got a nurse practitioner on staff. We work closely with an MD. We've got like life coaches and health coaches and different people of different backgrounds, nutrition and all of that, and psychology background as well, an herbalist. And so we all kind of ditched our titles because none of what we learned really got us fully healthy. They manage symptoms. And so for me, I mean, say, oh, I'm a functional medicine practitioner, I can still say it, but it's not really the paradigm that we're in. And so it was really more powerful to realize, like, even the MD didn't learn this in school, and is wanting to, train with me to really learn healing, like true healing, deeper healing. And so, and she's an MD who's a functional medicine practitioner that still found the limits. So it's kind of like we got to grow beyond those labels in order to get the kinds of results and experience that we want.
It's true. That's why I ditched all of my certifications. I have nothing.
Yes. High five. I love it.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. So I create my own programs and I create my own packages and put things together in a certain way.
I love it. It's so needed. It's so needed in this world.
Right.
So we are working with mostly people with like mystery illnesses, autoimmune disease. We've had clients that like have gone to the Mayo Clinic and not gotten help and then come to us and had success. Same with like Stanford's top medical research team. We do see some trauma like PTSD, CPTSD, anxiety, depression. We do see chronic pain and, lots of digestive and hormonal and infertility and you name it. It's
Do you track
chronic.
your data? Do you track the data? Do you track how you do with people? Do you?
Yes, I in my envision, I think we would have a different form of tracking with charts and spreadsheets, but we do track everything and document everything. So we're building, over the years, we're building, case studies and really seeing what
do you know
works.
what your percent effectiveness? Like if you bring in 100 clients, are you 100 clients? Are all your clients 100% cured or asymptomatic? They don't have any symptoms anymore?
I
Or
know.
are you
I
more
always,
like
I never,
60%, 40%? I don't know.
I don't lead with it because I'm like, well, it just sounds stupid. Over the last, I would say 4 years, we've had a 100% success rate. We tweaked some things, but we also don't have like a cookie cutter model. So I try to say like, it doesn't sound nuts. I mean, it does sound nuts, but it also doesn't because we're not going to stop with someone until the results are achieved. So we know that if there is a symptom, we can go find the root in the brain and nervous system to work around it and see the healing. So we consistently, just continue to work until we achieve those results together.
Okay.
Nice, very nice.
So now, do you see this as abandonment of conventional medicine, standard medicine in the U.S., or do you see it as something that should just be integrated as part of the care?
I don't see it as an abandonment. I don't think we're ready for that. Also, there's really important things in regular medicine, especially emergency medicine and life-saving medicine, for the chronic illnesses. It's like where that medicine ends, I think this is a beautiful thing to begin. And I got one of your questions earlier, like, do we get rid of conventional medicine or can we integrate it? Is it just a paradigm shift? I'm like, yeah, it's a paradigm shift. It would be beautiful if we could have the beauty of both. I will say that our clients are educated on a lot of things, that they're asking their doctors certain questions or for certain tests or for certain alternative options that their doctors don't even know exist. So a lot of times our clients are like having to educate their doctors and bring in studies and like say, look at this research article, like, please do some research on it. So our clients tend to be a little more educated so they can navigate the conventional system more effectively and still, not get stuck with a chronic illness.
Yeah, I think that's very, I think that's key and fits with what we try to get our our audience. I had to call them an audience because they're more than just an audience to us, the people we try to serve and interact with.
Yeah.
But we've talked about how do you advocate for yourself? How do you educate yourself to go in there? How do you be an informed consumer? And it gets along the line, what's been, you're a combination for us. You're like one of our wellness heroes, as well as a provider that can help people heal on that. But what's been consistent in that is that people have kind of, perhaps out of necessity, become, go back to my old technology days where I was a systems integrator. You become your own integrator, your own advocate, like you talk about pulling things together. So how do you help people understand that's what they've got to do? And
Yeah.
how do you help them, as you talk about, be prepared to do so?
Yes. I think education is key. We usually spend like a good hour just educating on the nervous system. What are the signs of being sympathetic dominance? What are the patterns you have? And then we go right into practical application. So we first help people uncover like a map of when their illnesses became chronic or turned on or started. And we show and find the events that triggered the nervous system 3 months prior and educate them on that whole process and the research behind it. And when they really uncover like what is triggering their nervous system, like for me, I was in a musical and the musical ended, and 3 months later I had an autoimmune disease and was bedridden. Like what? And so I never thought anything of it until I was learning how the nervous system works and to look at the time frame. So as I dug a little bit deeper and was coachable through the process, I realized that what got triggered inside was I don't belong. And that went to some childhood trauma. And I never knew that was still there. It was crazy. Like, of course I belong. I'm very nice and everyone loves me.
Subconscious, right?
Subconscious. So once that pattern was there, I could see it everywhere. And so just one experience like that, and you can feel in your nervous system the emotional charge, you recognize there are unconscious things that are at play here, dysregulating us. So we got to find what those illnesses are about and what kind of work we'd be doing. We also talk a lot about what it is to be unhealthy. And we stop talking about symptoms. And when we start talking about patterns and habits, how we treat ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, how we judge ourselves, like really being regulated is being secure and loving yourself and caring for yourself and lots of self-care, doing your best, and talking to yourself like you would a best friend. How many of us do that? Me, but but it's learning these things, right? So it's what does healthy look like, and it's so much more than just symptoms. It really is peace of mind and being at peace with myself, my life, my past, and to live a life in alignment with my commitments and values. And so then we do.
I'm gonna stop you there.
Okay.
A lot of wisdom, and it's coming out, and we're gonna have to have you come back. But we're gonna wrap up here a little quickly with a couple of things. But what I want to. We've alluded to your practice and you can help, but we didn't already tell people what your practice name was and how they can reach us. So if you can give them that, then I've noticed now how you like to answer. So I'm going to give you your questions all at once here, and so you can wrap it all up. What's your practice? How do they reach you? Number two. Now let's leave them with a couple of tips as to what could they start with today, and how should they do that?
Yes, thank you. You're such a good host, by the way. Chronic illness solutions singular, not solutions, because the solution is you. So chronicillnesssolution.com. You can find blog articles about this. You can schedule a free consult. We are happy to talk with you and gift you some sessions and see if that's a good fit for you. Well, now I'm going to forget all your promptings. That's how to contact us. That's the best way. And practical.
That's right. The other thing was, so let's say someone's feeling overwhelmed. They say, well, how do I begin this and start making this shift? And then how can they do that? And what's one little practice you would give somebody today to start living in that parasympathetic?
Yep, very good. So come play with us. That's a practical, easy one. We'll organize it for you. Practically, I would say slow down. The slower you go, the more regulated you are. So timeouts are a good thing. And if 5 to 10 times a day, right? So when you get up in bed or go to bed, every time you sit down and eat, take some deep breaths. Actually listen to the sounds around you. Like go through your senses. What do I see, smell, hear, taste, feel, internally, externally? Listen to sounds far away. Anything you can do to bring a more meditative state or a state of presence, or just pausing, getting out of your head, feeling your body, that's going to automatically begin to interrupt the sympathetic dominant state. And it's going to teach you regulation more consistently over time.
And Thanks. And then I'd like to, I'm gonna give you one more question before I turn it over to Bob
Okay.
here, which is, suppose there are some people like me out there and say, this, like I used to be in a couple of years, this sounds all woo-woo to me, this parasympathetic stuff, that's a bunch of hooey. So my call's out there with the wood nips. Where can they go and learn? Where would you point them to say, educate yourself about the parasympathetic and its power?
That's
And
to me.
yes, that's your question.
Okay.
How would you tell them that? So that they'll now pick up, so now they will go to your website after taking a look at something, or they will reach out to you, or they will at least take your one daily advice and say, okay, there's
Yeah.
really something to this parasympathetic. How should they educate themselves?
Yeah, I'm actually building a 2-year curriculum of just books and studies that people can go through for free. So if y'all want that, feel free to reach out. This has been discovered over and over and over again. So it's like you look at German New Medicine, you look at Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief, The Psychology of Change and Perception, right? You look at Joe Dispenza, you look at Gabor Mate, I hope I'm saying that correctly. These people are all pointing to the same kinds of things, which is we've got to regulate, and stress is key. Thank you, Dr. Bob. It really comes down to stress. Some of my other favorites are David Hawkins, that talks a lot about the nervous system and the states of consciousness and how, at lower survival states, we might react to food that's microwaved and toxins, but at higher consciousness states, we no longer have a negative reaction. It's very fascinating research. I also love Eckhart Tolle, who's great. These are some. Have fun with your research of your rabbit holes.
I think I'd rather make an appointment with you and get you to teach me the essence of this rather than doing my own research which would probably take about 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, that is easier. Yeah.
That's great.
Thank
Well,
you.
I just want to say, Michal, it's been fantastic having you with us today. Your story is amazing, incredible. The road you had to travel to get where you are is just fascinating. I'm sure everyone listening can identify with the fact that you were determined to get better. You were going to heal. You made a conscious decision that you shall heal. And even when you didn't know how to do it, that's the key. People who make those decisions, to do something, even though they don't know how to do it, in my opinion, that's kind of like what pulled you out. And I love the
Yes.
story, and I love the fact that you've gotten so excellent at helping people get out of their conditions through this parasympathetic sympathetic balance. So thanks for being here with us, and everybody get a hold of Michal and let her help you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us.